And let's get more analysis on those meetings in Washington with Ariel Cohen. He's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, and he joins me now from Washington, D.C. Ariel, thanks for joining me. Now, before this summit, you wrote about the need for America to project more on the world stage. Is this new headquarters that's been planned in Germany, commanded by an American general, what you're talking about?
It's not only that. It is a dire situation with the Western alliance producing less of some of the vital ammunition and materiel than Russia and the new Russian allies, Iran and North Korea. Now we find out that China is instrumental in developing drones for Russia. The current conflict and the future conflicts will be to a great degree a competition between very expensive, large, sophisticated systems that the West has produced well versus cheap, mass-produced land drones, aerial drones, and sea drones that China, Russia, and others can produce very well. Ukraine can produce 1 million drones a year. Russia can produce 2 million drones a year. This is a new environment we're in, and I do not hear NATO leaders talking seriously about it. And the tragedy of American political crisis in the middle of this celebratory NATO 75th anniversary summit is staring us in the face. We have a hot war in Europe. We have a threat of a coalition of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and some of the other satellites of that coalition. They just had a Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Astana, Kazakhstan, and we are, to say the least, not at our best in the anniversary summit in Washington.
So, Ariel, you're saying that there is an arms race going on that has changed somewhat in its nature, and that NATO isn't doing enough.
Correct. And it didn't change somewhat. It's changing the balance of power fundamentally. The Europeans and the Americans, for that matter, do not recognize how fast these technologies are shifting. And it's time for leadership on both sides of the Atlantic in cooperation. Brussels and Washington need to talk to each other. London, Paris, and Berlin need to talk to each other. And that triangle needs to talk to Washington. We all need to talk to Seoul and Tokyo, and we're not doing that. In the meantime, I'm talking to people who travel to Russia. They're telling me Russia does not feel the burn of this war the way the Ukrainians are feeling the burn, burying their children, picking up rubble in destroyed hospitals. Folks, this is very, very serious. And again, the celebratory mood is not what we're looking for. And I will add one more very important thing. The 2% that former President Trump was talking about, that the Europeans were not contributing, a lot of them are contributing. The GDP share of military budgets in Europe has risen, but this is a new ball game. The 2% was the Wales summit after the Russian 2014 invasion of Ukraine. That was the 2% 10 years ago. Now we need to look at higher numbers than that in order to deter, because only through deterrence we will prevent a much broader and more terrible confrontation in Europe and elsewhere.
Ariel, we've just got 30 seconds left. I want to get your thoughts on this. You've mentioned Trump. You mentioned the current political problems that Biden is facing domestically. Looking ahead to later in the year, what do you think the future could hold and the balance of power could hold, depending on how the election goes in November?
I only hope and pray that the rhetoric about not protecting our European allies if they don't pay was just that rhetoric in order to squeeze more contributions from our European allies. And I must say, they had to pay more, they had to do more, they had to produce more. Now, the question is what Mr. Trump is going to do if he is elected, or what, let's say, Vice President Harris is going to do if she is elected. But regardless, the West is facing its greatest challenge since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And again, I pray to God that we are up to snuff on this tremendous security challenge.
Ariel, thank you very much for your perspective in the context as well. Ariel Cohen there, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council.